I'm okay with them rebooting Batman until the end of time, and it's not because I'm not sick of terrible reboots or remakes or just Hollywood doing the same thing over and over again. Because with everything else I am, but at least with a new Batman film, I know I'm going to get something different. Where so many franchises feel stuck trying to repeat what excited people about the original, Batman is one of the only ones where they're completely okay with resetting everything and just starting over again. Yes, there are core things that stay the same. There's a guy dressed up as a bat who fights crime, there's gonna be a Batmobile, and there's a very good chance that you're gonna see Thomas and Martha Wayne get shot. But everything else is pretty much open for reinvention. In the movies, we've had 6 different actors play a live-action version of this character in 35 years. More if you count the animated versions. And I just love seeing how different actors interpret the same character. It means you can ask a simple question like, what does Batman sound like? And there's a number of very different right answers. In the animated series, Kevin Conroy's Batman voice is effortlessly cool.
I want him bad, Stromwell. Real bad.
His voice feels powerful, there's such weight behind it, but it's incredibly clean. Compare that to Christian Bale's Batman voice.
No. I came back to stop you.
His is so much more rugged and hoarse, and that makes sense for his version of the character. The Dark Knight trilogy is really leaning into the fact that this is just a semi-normal guy who's taken this up. The voice is part of that act of becoming. Or you've got Ben Affleck's voice.
Do you bleed?
It's intimidating in a completely different way because it's been modulated. It's not totally human, and it makes sense for the character to want to disguise his voice and not ruin his throat doing it. These small differences in how they sound go beyond just cosmetic differences. They are a result of how that Batman fits into their world. And when there are certain things that stay the same, smaller changes become even more important in defining who the character is now. And seeing how a new actor will make changes, how they will make their mark on the character, and how they'll compare to the rest has become a part of the fun of the franchise. And weirdly, that's put Batman in a slightly more unique position in the superhero landscape. See, in 2008, when the MCU kicked off with Iron Man, Robert Downey Jr. was rightfully praised by everyone for his incredible performance as Tony Stark, and he proceeded to play the character for the next decade in multiple films. And in doing that, he's kind of set his portrayal of the character in stone. It feels kind of unthinkable to imagine another actor taking on that role, and if they were to do it, I don't think it would go down well with audiences. Whereas the idea of a new actor playing Batman has become almost part of what's interesting about the character. Everyone just assumes that the actor will be playing them for a limited amount of time and then they'll hand it over to someone else. But the shared universe of the MCU has locked a lot of this down. Even when Marvel has expanded into the multiverse to show different actors playing familiar characters, they're played as cameos. They're not really different interpretations of the character. Is it cool seeing John Krasinski as Mr. Fantastic? Sure, but we're kind of just seeing John Krasinski here. Even when they do give them more screen time, they're still limited to some minor variation of the world and tone that the MCU has had since 2008. Because Batman keeps getting rebooted, there are as many different worlds and tones as there are actors who have played him. With the Dark Knight trilogy, you get this incredibly grounded version of Batman. The film is shot on a lot of real locations. The Batmobile isn't a slick car, but a tank. The Joker is genuinely scary, his smile scarred into his face. It made the character and the world feel tangible in a way that we'd never seen on screen before. But then in the complete other direction, you can also have something like Batman Forever. This film has some of the most beautiful sets I've ever seen in a movie. Everything from Gotham streets to Two-Face's lair. They don't look real at all. Everything about them is exaggerated and drowned in this wonderful neon light, but it looks beautiful. And there's just so much character to it. The villains aren't intimidating at all. They're essentially just in Halloween costumes, but they're so much bloody fun. And so a Batman movie can be as campy as having shark repellent, or as dark as having actual serial killers. And even when most of the live action films have leaned into the Dark Knight, something like the Lego Batman movie can still exist and bring back more of that lighter tone.
What is the password?
Iron Man sucks.
Thank you.
And it's not even just for parody or for children. The Lego Batman movie is just as legitimate an interpretation of the character as any of the others. It's still the only Batman film that has really done any justice to the extended Bat family on screen. And the fact that's true after 60 years of live action Batman, I think that just shows how much more opportunity there is to play with this character. There's a whole fantastical element of the Batman comics that we haven't seen explored on screen. Villains like Clayface, Man-Bat, a proper Poison Ivy. They require a very different set of skills and strategies for Batman to take on, and now visual effects are at a point where you could really do those characters justice. It just needs an exciting filmmaker to take them on. And I'm sure there will be, because so far, love them or hate them, I don't think you can deny that the Batman franchise has attracted some of the most interesting directors. Every one of them, outside of their Batman films, have made some of the most iconic movies of their generation. I mean, look at the list. Beetlejuice, The Lost Boys, Inception, 300, Cloverfield, and while you mightn't love everything they did, with their Batman films, for the most part, they've had the freedom to make their mark on the film. Just one look at Batman v Superman, and you can recognise that is a Zack Snyder movie. One look at 1989's Batman, you can recognise that's a Tim Burton movie. When you compare this to the MCU, it feels like their directors don't really have the same level of freedom to author the movie. Everything has to be contained in the MCU box. Sometimes a bad movie that's doing something that doesn't work can be way more interesting than a fine movie that feels like it's just repeating what you've already seen. I would much rather see Arnold Schwarzenegger hammered up as Mr. Freeze than Corey Stoltz's face squeezed into MODOK. So while reboots and sequels can make you feel like Hollywood is just creatively bankrupt, I'm glad that Batman at least has been allowed to change and evolve. There's no one actor who owns the role, and I'm excited by the possibility that maybe the best is still yet to come.